Hello, nerds, and welcome to the Engadget podcast. This is episode 30, I Can Change. On this week's show, we've got Devindra Hardwar.
Hello, I can't change.
No change for you.
I give up, yeah.
We also have Dana Woolman. Can you change?
I can change my seat because he keeps taking my seat every other week on the podcast.
Dana is super into her seat.
Yeah.
Just for future reference.
This is like my primary seat this week, but I put my butt in it before he could put.
I am your host, Terrence O'Brien. I am also incapable of change, unfortunately. Basically, we're all terrible.
Yeah.
We're all curmudgeons.
This is a curmudgeon block. Depending on who's on the podcast, we have a different group. This is a curmudgeon group.
So everybody knows to expect this is going to be a little bit down. I will say on a positive note,
yes,
we survived the great AWS outage of 2017, which is nice. I'm feeling pretty good about that.
Did you see the clip of the guy at the AWS conference trying to? That was the best part of this whole thing.
That I agree. That was pretty much the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, was it yesterday or the day before?
Day before. Yeah.
Amazon's web services had a little bit of trouble and kind of went down and took down a whole bunch of other things with it, including a lot of stuff that we use personally here at Engadget to kind of do our jobs.
We didn't totally go down, but it took us, it made our jobs harder, for sure.
So our assignment tracking tool, Trello, went down. Slack, which is how we all stay in contact throughout the course of the day, had some trouble. It was going in and out. Our actual website was up and down.
Our whole image search, just to put images in our posts. This is the problem with consolidating internet services, guys. Remember the ideal of a distributed network? We came up with it in the 70s. It seemed to work pretty well for a while, and then we just went backwards.
Yeah, so now everything is either Google or Amazon. So if one of those two things goes down, we're all screwed.
Great.
But we survived. Everything was okay. We're back to work, and Engadget is still up and running, and the world has not literally burned to the ground yet.
Yeah.
Which I'm very happy to say.
I was so there was a whole subway outage in New York this morning, and as I was cabbing in, I just saw a food cart just overturned on its side. I was like, this is it. This is the end.
This is a sign. You guys want to get to it?
Sure.
All right, let's start, as we do every week, with Flame Wars. This is kind of where we debate some of the bigger stories of the week, kind of talk our way through them. I want to start with YouTube TV. So earlier this week, Google kind of took the veil off of their live TV service. This is clearly meant to compete with PlayStation Vue and Sling and some other services.
Yeah, DirecTV.
Yeah.
And that whole thing, yeah.
So my question for you guys is, can this actually compete with those products? Or is this going to be another one of these things that Google launches, forgets about, and then kind of falls by the wayside? Devindra, you want to kick this off?
Yeah, I mean, I've covered a bunch of these things. So I use Sling, I've tested Vue, I've tested the DirecTV thing, and they all just kind of do the same thing. They just bring live TV to your internet, and that's great. This whole field is getting kind of boring now, and nobody's really doing anything different. The one big difference here with YouTube, though, is that everyone's always on YouTube, right? It's not that hard to imagine, adding channels alongside all your other YouTube stuff, and that seems like something that could be more useful to a lot of people, even though they're missing some channels. I don't think a lot of people are going to go subscribe to DirecTV in their whole thing because it's such a separate service from what they normally do.
When you say everyone's on YouTube, do you mean the owners of the channels, like the media companies, or
I mean
people like
users? And I don't spend that much time on YouTube too. I'm still an old fogey who watches real TV shows, scripted content. But it's a really smart way to combine where it puts the content that isn't available where people actually are right now.
I know. What do you think, Dana?
I think right now the list of channels seems a little basic. I mean, it seems like it's great for people who like either sports or network sitcoms.
Yeah.
So is it good for people who like sports, though? So I was looking at the lineup as well, and it has ESPN, which is great. But everybody kind of has ESPN, but it's missing kind of a big one that I feel like all of these services are, which is local sports channels, which are really the most important one at the end of the day. ESPN hosts maybe 5 or 6 Met games throughout the course of the year. If I want to watch the Mets, I need local channels, I need SNY, which means I'd have to get FiOS or local cable because it's not a streaming thing. It's not offered on Sling TV, to my knowledge, or PlayStation View. And that's kind of, yeah, I don't know. Like, so if you are a sports fan, don't you need those local channels, which are kind of missing?
I'm not a local sports fan.
I'm
So
It's a very specific type of sports fan. But
Yeah.
the bigger problem is that this one doesn't have Viacom channels at all. Discovery, A&E, AMC, Turner. Like AMC, Walking Dead is the biggest show in
Comedy
the
Central.
country. Yeah, all that stuff.
And Comedy Central might be done for good on streaming services, and a lot of those Viacom channels might be, it sounds like.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, they definitely got a lot of their stuff out of Hulu. I'm not sure what their
I
plans
mean, Comedy
are here.
Central, The Daily Show, for one, is
Yeah,
gone.
It's gone from
at this
Hulu.
point.
But I know Comedy Central is still on Sling. And all these channels are also on PlayStation View, too, for the same $35 a month plan. So this is a start from YouTube. That's really all it is. And it seems like a much more useful service than YouTube Red, which I never quite understood. I paid for it a little, and terrible name. Okay, YouTube videos without ads, some original content. This thing, you'll get some YouTube Red content with YouTube TV, but not the ad-free capability. So I think they should throw in the ad-free stuff.
Yeah, I feel like they should probably marry those two services a little bit better.
Yeah.
Buying the YouTube TV should obviously, I think, get you YouTube Red, get you that lack of
Just call it YouTube
advertisements.
Red TV, and there will be no
away.
mistakes with that
Yeah.
title at all.
And as a guy who watches a whole lot of YouTube, I'm not even very sold on this. Like, I'm the opposite of you. I probably watch more YouTube than like traditional TV at this
what do you
point.
watch on YouTube?
A lot of nonsense, mostly. Like, I mean,
That's most of YouTube, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's good, like, short form content where, like, I don't want to sit down and watch an hour-long drama. I don't want to sit and watch a movie. I'll put on, like, SciShow or Crash Course, or I watch a lot of educational programming because I'm a nerd. What? I got a thing for the Green Brothers and educational programming, so sue me.
But yeah, YouTube has become that sort of thing for me too, where like in between maybe watching an episode or something, if I'm just wasting time, I'll go watch an episode of You Suck at Cooking or something.
Yeah.
And Movies with Mikey is my favorite new movie show. So it's a whole bunch of things available there. I'm interested to see what they're doing. I'm definitely getting tired of hearing people launching their live TV services because we know Apple's going to do one soon too. That could be interesting, but the main draw there is putting it into the Apple TV.
Yeah. We'll have to see what happens. Moving on, this is a topic that we've kind of addressed several times on the show, and I feel like we're going to have to address it pretty much until we no longer have a show. Until the internet stops being a thing and humanity is erased off the face of the earth, we're going to be talking about Twitter trolls.
Or trolls in general, yeah.
Yeah. So the other day, Twitter launched some new tools for kind of controlling your feed and who can contact you and what notifications you get and all of that stuff. One of you guys kind of want to walk us through those new features real quick?
They've just really revamped what you can mute and the types of accounts that you can use. So yeah, you can mute different account types, things like people with unverified email addresses, unverified phone numbers, and even the egg avatar.
Yes.
That's really the big one.
best thing because I've never had a good conversation with an egg,
No.
a Twitter egg. But yeah, this sort of thing I think is it's kind of a big deal. This is what we've needed for a while.
So is this them finally kind of taking the troll problem seriously and really living up to their promise to accelerate delivering these kind of tools to people?
It's years late, but yeah, sure.
I think it goes beyond that. I think it represents a slight rethinking of what it means to have a conversation on Twitter. I mean, this is definitely a less democratic approach in a way that I personally am excited
100%
about.
okay about.
Yeah. I mean, I think originally the premise was you could be Lady Gaga or you could be a Twitter egg and you could talk to someone you found interesting. And you didn't really have the right to not be spoken to unless you fully made your account private. This is less democratic, right? I mean, when you mute the eggs, you're essentially, and mute unverified people, you're essentially saying, I don't want to engage with the nobodies. And sorry out there, it's going to get me in trouble.
Yeah, I
but-
mean, when you phrase it that way, it sounds bad.
The pros.
Just gonna be honest about that one.
But it's true. It's
true.
Yeah.
I stand by it. Yeah.
I'm willing to engage in a conversation with you if you take the amount of time to like give yourself an avatar and like have a conversation, because
I mean,
all I've gotten from eggs is just shouting. yelling.
Yeah, I mean, I would never block unverified, but I 100% am into blocking all of the eggs. Like, if you can't be bothered to fill out an account, like, you're clearly not worth my time.
Picture any photo on your computer. Just
I mean, I'm
something,
coming
yeah.
at this, I think, from a more feminist perspective in the
For
first
sure.
place, where I think most women have spent their whole lives resisting this idea that they are obligated to speak to men they don't know or interact or engage with men they don't know. And I'm coming at it from that perspective. But yeah, I mean, even if you are polite, why am I obligated to engage with you?
I don't think you are
Yeah.
at all.
A lot of Twitter users feel like,
I think there's a sense of entitlement, especially among the trolliest of the Twitter trolls.
I mean, I don't feel obligated to respond to people. People say horrible things to me, and I just go, okay.
So, yeah, I mean,
and I ignore it and move on with my
this is
day.
not the most democratic approach, but it does at the same time feel fair or just. Yeah.
it's what we need is a lot of tools to suit different use cases. So this is a much more flexible way of making your Twitter experience better. You can also, for the muting, you can also like just mute somebody for a short while, which is something I've wanted to do too. Like even people I like sometimes they're just like on a rant or on a Twitter storm or something. I'm like,
This guy.
yeah, sports ball, just mute Terrence like until sports ball wins.
So for 8 months out of the year, Devindra wants to mute me because he doesn't want to hear about the Mets. That's basically what he's saying.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, there's occasionally some political tweets in there now. It's just the balance is shifted slightly. Let's move on to our last one, though, and this is something we spent quite a lot of time talking about last week, and that is Uber. And this is a really simple question, which is it time for Uber's CEO to just step down? So maybe we should start by explaining what happened after we recorded last week's episode. And that is that Travis Kalanick, I never know how to pronounce his last name, but that's what I'm going to go with.
This definitely happened in the last podcast, but go on.
No, this was after.
This
No,
particular
I'm saying
thing.
you being
Oh.
unable to pronounce his name.
Yeah,
definitely
oh, that's-
on the very
We'll
last
just-
podcast.
Every episode, just pick a different pronunciation.
That's how I like to roll. If I don't know how to pronounce your name, I'm not going to bother to find out. I'm just going to try different ones until I stumble on the right one.
Sure.
And somebody tells me. So he was caught on video basically yelling at and arguing with an Uber driver who was raising some issues about fare prices falling and how that was affecting his ability to support himself as an Uber
And
driver.
kudos to that Uber driver for recognizing this opportunity
Yeah.
he had. Yeah.
And I mean, look, you can take some issue perhaps with the way the driver approached the situation, but to be fair, it's his livelihood at stake. It's
And your boss just gets in the back seat for the company you're working for. I think it's fair to ask questions.
yeah. But Kalanick's response was insanely unprofessional, to put it bluntly. I don't even know where to start. I mean, basically, he just kind of like yelled at, berated him, and told him he wasn't willing to take responsibility for his own decisions in life, which is fucking rich. Coming from this multi-millionaire CEO of a company that has dodged responsibility for its own fuck-ups for years now. End rant, guys. Debate.
I mean, it's to your greater question, should he step down? A lot of every single one of Uber's problems that we've seen lately are directly related to how he's approached the company. His like just completely flaunting regulations, worker needs, what cities actually want. Like he doesn't actually listen. It's win and disrupt at all costs. A lot of his we know he's a big Ayn Rand fan. Like that, it's purely that. It's just like want to be super successful at all costs. There's no morality there.
Dana.
So I would like to see him step down, not necessarily because of this latest incident in particular. I don't think anyone comes out of that incident looking that great.
No.
I don't think the CEO does, but I also think he may have been slightly provoked. There is this sense that he may have picked a fight and had it on camera, knowing what he was going to do. I don't know. I don't think either of them come out of that situation looking particularly
Drivers have
good.
cameras, though, like just as security. Like, that's a thing, yeah.
But I was thinking about it this morning. So for those people out there, the New York City subway system just shit the bed this morning. The trains, just what at first seemed like infrequent trains with no space for new people, turned into no trains. So it took me 90 minutes to get to work, and I eventually, I did call an Uber. And it's funny because before I got going today, I was actually, as I was getting ready for work, thinking about Uber, and I was getting all self-righteous. I was like, I'm going to delete my account soon. And it was really because of, the sexual harassment stuff, but I was like, I'm going to delete my account soon, blah, blah, blah. And then I ended up using Uber, and I don't know where that puts me. I think it puts us in a place where...
Well, you really want to get here for the show, right? So
yes,
yeah.
But Uber has a great, leadership aside, it has a great product. I think we've discussed it as too big to fail on this podcast before. And I think that's true. And that is the case against him stepping down, is the fact that his presence hasn't hurt the business the way you would hope, because people like you and me will still happily get into an Uber if we need to get to work and the subways are failing us.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I felt self-righteous about it, and I felt like he should step down, that he is responsible for the toxic culture, but his being there, it doesn't seem to be hurting business.
I mean,
as much as you'd expect, maybe.
He immediately issued an apology here. Like, and this guy has issued so many apologies over the years. So this is like, guys, I'm really, really sorry. He's like a kid who's just like always doing something bad and like always has to apologize to the teacher. I hear you, Dana. What I do like is that there's so many alternatives out there now. So yeah, I looked at Uber this morning when I was trying to get in. I looked at Lyft too, which also works in many places.
Devendra also lives in Brooklyn and ended up in a cab on the way to work in Manhattan.
It was the only way to get here.
I mean, I'm just going to throw it out there, guys. We live in New York City. You know what else works really well?
Cabs.
You just hold up your hand and you wait for a cab.
I also used Curb this morning, which is one of the many like Verifone cab hailing apps for city cabs, and that worked really well too, because the Ubers were all 10 minutes out. The cab came in 1 minute.
Go ahead, Dana.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let him mansplain cab hailing to me on a podcast that everyone listens to. It is cold and windy outside. It was rush hour. Everyone else was escaping from the messed up subways. All the cabs appeared to be full.
Okay.
Yeah.
You needed to hail a private car.
You needed to you couldn't just stand on the street this morning because it was pretty crazy. But I did manage to hail a city cab, and that's a great thing. Like, that's the thing is, Uber's technology is fine, it's great, but all they really did is make the dispatch service electronic.
Yeah.
Lyft copied it immediately. It'll eventually, like, other cities can do it easily with things like Curb. So like, Uber isn't inherently special, even though Kalnick and his whole crew thinks it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's a service that anybody else could do. Maybe it's time for, if he won't step down, everybody to just start using Lyft, and maybe it's time for those drivers.
More people use
happening.
Lyft. Is it just
drivers
creatures of habit, or is there some perception that Lyft is inferior to Uber?
There is some laziness, I think. Yeah.
I think it's partially that. I mean, they're also kind of inherently different services, right? I mean,
Lyft's maps aren't as good. Like, I've had issues getting places with Lyft people.
And they're much more focused on sort of ride sharing than on kind of helping like black cars in their downtime make a little bit of extra money. But I mean, I think you can do it. I made the switch to Lyft a while ago.
Most Uber drivers support both. Like, and if you talk to them, like, most of the drivers I've talked to have said like they prefer Lyft. Yeah, just as a company, as something to work for.
Yeah. So yeah, but clearly he should step down. That's the end of the story. At the end of the day,
I'm just amazed. Like, in his apology, he says he needs leadership help, which has been obvious for years.
Yeah.
It's just funny that this is the event that makes it. I feel like after the sexual harassment claims, like, maybe he should have said it then.
I mean, that I noticed and I thought was bizarre. I don't know if you can have that both ways to say I'm the CEO of a publicly traded company,
Right.
but I need
I need leadership
I need
help.
leadership
Wouldn't do
101.
Then maybe
God.
you shouldn't be the CEO of a publicly traded company.